The TCG Scoop Show is part of the Booster Pack Network. For more TCG-related content, visit theboosterpacknetwork.com. Hosting for this show is sponsored by Category 1 Games, the go-to shop for all of your classic TCG needs. Find your favorites or discover something new at category1games.com.
Hello and welcome to TCG Scoops, the TCG news show that happens every month here on the Booster Pack Network. My name is Rands, and I am joined by some fabulous other fans and lovers of cardboard collectibles. So we're going to start down the line just so you understand who everybody is and what they're an expert in. Starting directly to my left, we have...
I'm Parker, and I'm the Yu-Gi-Oh! Expert.
Excellent. Then next to Parker, we have
Tyler, the Pokemon expert.
Excellent. And then at the end of the line...
The one and only Nico.
The one and only Nico.
Only
irreplaceable, if anything. He's basically a one-of-one serialized card. All right, so, again, before we get started, if you are a fan of these kind of big three TCGs, I suggest you jump on to Toad and Troll. Great website if you're looking to buy singles. Check the description of this episode. You'll find a discount code you can use, and you can jump over there and get a discount and support the show at the same time just by listening and buying some cards from Toad and Troll. All right, let's jump into it. I hear there's a bunch of controversy this month and news coming out of all the different big TCGs. We're going to start with Parker. Parker, let's rap about Yu-Gi-Oh! What do you got going on this month?
All right, so Yu-Gi-Oh! We had a lot of stuff going on. So we just got a new set. I think I talked about it a little bit last time on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of meta shakeups that we were expecting from that, but we didn't have any tournament results.
What was the name of the set?
It was Cyberstorm Access.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, we got some really good Pearly card. I have a hard time pronouncing it. Pearly. It's like this little cat archetype. And we got
this is the Eevee type thing, right? Yeah. So listeners of the show last month, we talked about this briefly. Yeah.
And then there's Super Heavy Samurai. That was the one that can't play any spells or traps.
Oh, okay.
So those two decks were doing really good in the tournaments since then. And then we had some other decks that were doing really well. Mathmech, Naturia. And then in the middle of a tournament on Saturday, I believe.
So that would be Saturday, what, the 3rd?
Yeah.
Yeah, Saturday the 3rd of June. Yep.
So there's a regional going on. There was a nationals going on, I believe, in Europe as well. And they released a ban list during the tournament.
So people have to, chuck their cards out of their decks and just, fling them across the room?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come into effect until, I believe, this Wednesday or something. But people are mid-round, the ban list is out. They're like, what the hell's going on? So everybody.
Good work, Konami, on a Saturday too.
Yeah, and so everybody who does YouTube videos for the game, they were at the tournament, so they couldn't really do any ban list reaction videos and anything like that. But some people did. They ran out of the venue just to record a quick little video reacting to it. But they actually did hit some of these new archetypes that just came out in Cyberstorm Access this month.
Oh, already?
Yeah, already
Wow.
They hit them.
How long has that set been out prior to the ban list announcement?
It just came out at the start of May.
Okay, so less than a month.
Yeah.
All right,
They didn't hit any cards that just came out of Cyberstorm Access, but cards from that archetype.
Okay, right.
Like the Pirelli deck, which just came out in Amazing Defenders, which wasn't that long ago either. Got one of their main quick play spells limited, which is you need it to do the main combo of the deck. Now you can only play one of it now. And then Super Heavy Samurai, they had a Link 1 monster, which basically made the deck have one card combos. So you could end on 3 or 4 negates with one card, and you had 12 different ways to do this one card combo. But they got rid of the Link 1. The Link 1 is banned now. So now you need 2 cards to do your combo.
So
everyone says the deck sucks now.
They banned these cards a month after this deck became good, basically, is what you're saying?
They just
they didn't let the meta develop. They didn't let counterplay get figured out.
Pretty much, yeah.
They just were no.
Do you think that's a reaction to the Japanese game? Because obviously, Japan gets the cards early. OCG, which is original card game, the Japanese version of the game. Do you think that was a reaction to that, or do you think that these are justified from a TCG perspective, which is the English version?
I don't know. This seems a little premature. These decks are just barely getting into meta, and they don't usually do this, except for Master Duel, I guess. They do this a lot on Master Duel, but they don't usually do this in the TCG. Usually decks will have a little bit more time to play with their new toys before they get banned and stuff like this. Another one was Mathmech Circular, which is another fairly new support card for Mathmech, and that just got limited to 1.
Okay.
Mathmech has been doing really well lately as well. So like.
Now, in any of the examples you've given so far, would you say that it sounds like it was a pretty healthy meta? It sounds like there's at least 3 major decks getting played in it. And I think bans should be reserved for tier 0 type decks where you're literally, as we talked about, tier 0, tier elements. Many years ago. Like, that's a ban situation, but this just sounds like they're banning the good stuff.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of like good decks that you can play, and none of these decks were even like the best deck you could play. Kashtira was the best deck that you can play, and they did hit it on the ban list, but like not enough for it to like not be played anymore. It still does some pretty obnoxious things, and kind of can, just for existing, make people not want to play other decks because they put up a big boss monster that stops your opponent from sending anything to the graveyard. They get banished instead. So any deck that has graveyard effects is kind of turned off just because you're going against Kashtira.
And that's like a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh from my understanding. So that's like most decks don't get to play the game anymore. So.
Yeah, pretty much. You don't want to let your opponent play the game. Come on.
I mean, where's the fun in playing the game?
Yeah. Exactly. So, but there's one thing I do want to talk about the Pirelli deck before I move on. They were starting to play this card called Santa Claus. Which is like, I just think it's amazing that the Santa Claus card, and it's not like Santa Claus like normal Santa. It's like Claus, like he's like a demon or a fiend or something like that.
That sort of gives me a Nightmare Before Christmas vibe. Sandy Claus. That sort of style. I love that.
It's a holiday promo, but like it's used right now because it can tribute your opponent's monsters. So even if they're like unaffected by effects, you just give them this monster and it'll get rid of it.
Oh, sort of like the old lava golem and stuff like that way back in the early days.
Like lava golem, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it summons it in defense, which mattered a lot for Pirelli. But yeah, moving on. So the ban list came out. We got a lot of like big hits, like I mentioned, the Super Heavy Samurai one. One big one that everybody loved was number 89, Diablosis the Mind Hacker, which was played in Kashtira. It's pretty much made for Kashtira. It was like what they designed Kashtira around, pretty much. It can rip cards out of your extra deck, which nobody loves, because you have to basically play extra copies of the same card.
Like extra deck, well, because the extra deck doesn't have a deck limit, right? So
15 cards.
50, it does, right.
It does have a deck limit. Yeah.
Oh,
so
weird.
It made it really annoying because you'd have to play 2 copies of cards just because they would rip it out.
And it gets banished, or it goes to the grave?
Face down, so you can't even interact with it as much if it's banished.
So is it randomly chosen from the deck then?
They get to pick. So they would look at your extra deck and banish one face down, so you don't have access to it anymore for the rest of the game.
Right. So, but you would know what the card is because you could.
You can look at your own face down banished cards. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And it would also enable a lock where you could lock up all your opponent's zones, so they can't put any more cards on the field. So getting rid of that is obviously really good for the game. So nobody loved that. The other Kashtira hits was the boss monster that I mentioned before that banishes cards. It got limited to 1, so basically if you get rid of it once, you don't have to deal with it anymore. Sometimes people were putting up 2 of these in one turn before, so it's really good that that's gone now.
So is full board locking like really popular or common in Yu-Gi-Oh?
It was for this one deck.
Okay.
But it's pretty much gone now because nobody likes playing against that. They
no one likes playing
against 5 of your
against
spell
it,
zones on their turn, and then on your turn they lock 5 of your monster zones.
Like in Pokemon, it's relatively hard to do that in standard in general, right? So for control to be like, it's kind of a love-hate thing. Everyone likes seeing control doing well, but no one wants to play against control.
Yeah, and like this was very consistent too. Like this could do this pretty
awful
easily.
to play against.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't even like hit the consistency very much because the only card that they hit in the main deck was Kashtira Unicorn, which is like their main starter, but they went from 3 to 2 now. So
there's one less.
They lost like 10% consistency, I believe.
Right.
And so they can still do all the same things. It's just they have less extra deck monsters to make.
Yeah. And what does the current Yu-Gi-Oh format have much in the way of tutoring? Like, can they pull it out of the deck and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. There's lots of ways that they can still do their combo. And still get access to this card.
So the banning really doesn't make that big of a difference.
It didn't do anything to the main deck pretty much. It's just they made the extra deck a little bit more fair because Diablosis is gone now, and you still have to deal with the boss monster, but they only have 1 of it now instead of 2, or instead of like 3 or whatever. Some other cards that got hit. So I mentioned Pirelli. Naturia got hit, which was random because it was kind of showing up a little bit here and there, but they got one of their cards limited to 1, which people were kind of confused about. We also had Psyframe Gear Gamma, which is a hand trap that a lot of people were using. So basically, it says whenever your opponent activates a monster effect and you have no monsters on your field, you can special summon it and a level 6 normal monster from your deck, negate and destroy that effect. So it only works if you have no monsters on your field. So it's good going first. And yeah, you have to run like an extra brick basically to get it to work, because you have 3 of the gamma and then you'd have 1 of the driver, which is the card that you have to summon to negate the effect. But now that it's limited to 1, so you went from 3-in-1 ratio to a 1-in-1 ratio. So people are pretty much not going to play this hand trap anymore.
Yeah, it's just consistency out the window.
Yeah, so it's basically banned, but they limited it to 1. Because because there is an archetype, like the Psi Frame Gear archetype, that like makes it work a lot better, but like I don't know, it's just kind of sad getting this hand trap removed from our play pool, because I really like using this. It stops Ash Blossom, it stops like lots of really good important stuff, and now we just can't use it anymore.
So it sounds like it's a pretty extensive sort of change to the sort of restricted ban, limited sort of stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh. How is the community reacting to these sort of changes? You sort of mentioned, some people are happy, some people are, a little bit pissed off. Tell me a little bit about, like, what is the general consensus and the feeling towards Konami after these pretty heavy bannings?
I think a lot of people, they like most of it, but like they do think that Kashtira could have got hit a little bit more, because nobody likes going against Kashtira anymore. It is going to be a little bit easier with no Diablosis. But some of the other hits like that I haven't gotten to yet are very confusing, don't really make a lot of sense. But they do have some good hits here. But it is a really big meta shakeup. So that is kind of exciting for me, because I like messing around with like new combos and stuff. Like they unlimited 1 extra deck monster that hasn't been around for a while, that has done some really broken things in the past. So people are going to be messing around with that from now on.
Okay.
So people are excited, but kind of like worried that Kashtira is still going to be the best.
Yeah, it sounds like there was quite an extensive list of cards they changed as well.
Yeah, like I have this. This is the whole list of everything that got hit. There's like
wow.
Yeah, so
some cards here.
There literally looks like there's about what's it, 30 odd cards literally on that list right there. That's that's pretty wild.
Crazy.
Yeah, a lot of them are kind of useless. Like they just used to be in like FTKs, and they're just like unlimited now. They brought back some cards for Sky Striker, so Sky Striker is going to be playable again now, because they're getting some new support. And then they have some hits like Runic Fountain, which Runic is a really good deck, but people were already playing 2, and now it's semi-limited, so you can only play 2. So like the hit does absolutely nothing.
What?
They were already playing 2, and now it's semi-limited, so you can only play 2.
It's like Konami's like, we get you. You know what's going on. Yeah,
like, we acknowledge
token banning there.
It's a lot like when the Ramonop Red was the biggest deck in Standard, and they banned Rampaging Ferocidons in Magic, which is a card that the decks didn't really play. Yeah. They sometimes did, but like there was such a great card pool for the mono red aggro build in that Standard that it was like, we don't care. This is still the best deck.
Just giving the deck builders a freebie.
Yeah, basically.
Well, now you don't have to think about this.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it. Yeah.
Go on. I was going to just ask quickly, because we're talking about bans, and I'm sure once we get to the end of the line here, we're going to be talking a lot about banning and changing of meta and stuff like that. But I did want to ask, like, does Konami, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, schedule their bannings? Are they like, we're doing it once a month, we're doing it like twice a month, or it's just like...
They say, we'll get back to you in a few months. That's about it.
No schedule, no expectation.
No.
It just happens in the middle of a tournament sometimes.
And I guess they got burned by it or something, is what I heard, but they don't really schedule it in advance. Pretty much every few months, you just start seeing on Twitter, like, it's banless season, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it's banless season. We got to expect the ban list sometimes. People have, like, down formulas for, like, when the schedule was for every year of, like, the ban list.
Farmer's Almanac for ban
list. Or Moneyball or something like that, analyzing statistics.
It's exactly like that. And so it's always random. Like, nobody knows when to expect it. And, of course, it shows up on, like, in the middle of a tournament on a Saturday. They don't even do Saturdays usually, but then they did it this time.
It sounds like they're trolling, just seeing who the real content creators are. Who's going to run out of that game, just drop the game.
Sitting there like, how about right now?
They're kind of messing with, like, the YouTuber's bag there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome. All right, so do we have more band stories?
So
getting the band back together?
Yeah, Denglong is one that I mentioned. That's the one that a lot of people are going to be messing with from here. Lightning Storm is one I want to mention, because it's a card that was not really being played at all, but it is limited to 2 now.
Okay.
Love that.
It's just the most random thing ever. Like, we get some of these hits that are really good. Like, yeah, Diablosis is banned, and then we get Lightning Storm to 2. It's like...
What does Lightning Storm do?
So it can either destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls, or all of their spell and traps.
Oh, sort of like a Feather
People
Duster meets
don't?
Reggae type thing.
Yeah, it's
People
Feather
don't
Dusty
play
Reggae.
that?
People
Oh my
don't
God.
play that.
No?
No.
Okay, I understand Yu-Gi-Oh.
The power level in
I don't
Yu-Gi-Oh
get this game.
It has
Well,
gone insane if
the thing
that's not playable.
The thing is, ever since the card got created, people started like inherently playing around it. So you'd
I guess
summon
that's-
all your cards in
Right.
defense position, then it doesn't do anything because it only destroys attack position.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so you just end on everything in defense.
That's classic Yu-Gi-Oh though. Like, it just constantly, sometimes when I play it, feels like a little bit of whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You know, if a monster pops up, it's like, boom, it's gone next turn. You know,
Yeah,
you gotta
pretty
you
much.
use it or lose it, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But that's pretty much it for the ban list. A lot of these hits were pretty much useless. But yeah, Sky Striker's a new thing. We might be hearing about that soon. Oh yeah, Sprite Starter. Sprite has been a deck that's been doing really pretty well as well. They got one of their best cards limited to 2.
What's the archetype based around there?
So they're all level 2 monsters. I think I talked about them maybe before.
I think you mentioned them last time.
They're like Thunder level 2 monsters. They all get like search effects, and some of the main deck monsters have negates too by sacrificing other level 2 monsters. It gets a lot of advantage just by doing its thing. Like, you get one card and you'll end up with like 5 monsters and like a removal spell and a lot of good stuff. So it's really good. They just got one of their best spells limited to 2, so it's a little consistency hit, but it's still a really good deck. It's kind of random too because it's not even like one of the best decks. Like, they hit these like good decks, but they don't hit Kashtira enough that it's not going to be as powerful anymore. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the ban list. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was Wild Survivors came out this week. So we got some reveals earlier on a couple of weeks ago.
In the American TCG or in
the American TCG. So
Yeah.
we got basically the rarities revealed a couple of weeks ago. And there's 3 archetypes in this set, and I talked about them before. It was the Hungry Burger archetype, the New
Right.
Velez, the Dinosaur archetype, and the other one was Valiant Souls, which is kind of like a fighter archetype.
Okay.
And basically in the OCG, they had tournament results for Valiant Souls, and it was doing pretty good. It was like one of the top decks. It wasn't the best deck or anything. But basically, Konami saw that, and they decided to make 7 of the cards ultra rares in the set. There's only 10 ultra rares in the whole set altogether.
Right.
You only get 3 ultra rares per box,
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
and 7 of them are for this one archetype.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of them is for dinosaurs, and 2 of them are for the New Velez, and then 7 of them are for this new archetype that's actually going to be somewhat competitive.
You can tell where Konami has their attention, right?
So
Yeah.
that brings up an interesting point that I think it hits all 3 games here, and this is something that's going around online. I mean, I'm sure people look it up. There was a list of games and the expensive buy-in of what top tier decks could cost. Whereas if you were just to generally say at the moment and to jump into Yu-Gi-Oh, what would you be laying out for a full a fully tier 1 level deck, just estimate wise?
For one deck, probably around $400 or $500 maybe.
4 or 5.
It's pretty
Okay.
expensive.
Yeah. All right, so that's sort of in the median range. What do you
Yeah.
think? Let's just throw it over to Pokemon with Tyler.
Pokemon, you could build a tier 1 top level deck from anywhere between, depending on the archetype you want to go for, probably 50 to 100 Canadian dollars.
And that's the power of reprints, right?
Yeah.
God
God bless.
Yeah,
Not bad, not
exactly.
bad.
Make those collector shinies and make everything else accessible. And now I think that might be a different answer depending on format for Magic. But let's pretend that Standard is still a thing.
Okay, well, it is, but
yeah. I mean, just got longer.
Yeah, right now, it depends from Standard to Standard too. And a big thing that drives up card prices in newer sets right now is Pioneer specifically. Recent Standard sets have had a lot of Pioneer cards that are very good.
Yeah.
Right.
And let me just have this. That's Pioneer is Magic 2014 onwards, right?
It is. I believe Magic 2015.
Sorry,
yeah,
made in 2014, but yeah,
yes,
2015,
made in
yeah.
2014, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Or no, it's no, it is 2014. You're right.
Oh,
I was
okay.
confused.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the other format.
Yeah, just when they started to change that sort of frame slightly.
Yeah, because there was a format that existed that was 2015.
Yeah.
And then they scrapped it and went to 2014.
We'll get into how they're dealing with formats in a second.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I want to get an idea. So obviously,
Yeah.
Pokemon is definitely the most wallet friendly of the 3 games. But yeah, go on.
Well, you're looking at
One
you're looking at Standard right now, and it's like, oh, Shieldred is $80. And the best decks run like three, four, two of them, depending on the deck, right? You're looking at all these other expensive cards, you know, like Boseiju is a $50 land that decks want to run 4 or 3 of if they're in green, right? So, but there are cheaper decks too. There are decks that are more around like the 160 to 200 range that are also competitive still in standard. But you are seeing these more expensive decks. They can go up to like $500 for standard. But that's just standard. If you want to talk about expensive decks, you know,
your more eternal formats.
You want to build like legacy lands or something. That's you know, $10,000 or so.
Oh yeah.
You want to build. You want to build.
That in Yu-Gi-Oh too. We got a lot of like staples that are really expensive that you'd want in like most decks, but like the actual core of the deck isn't expensive. It's just all the staples are expensive.
Yeah, and
drives up the price.
And old formats for Magic, it's just reserved lists. They just don't reprint the things, right? Yeah. Pauper is a great format though. So it's, you know, top deck and Pauper's probably like $60 right now.
And just to qualify for people who aren't playing Magic, Pauper is
all commons, only commons format, only common cards. So there's a whole range. It is it can be affordable, it can be not.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So it is a different type of conversation entirely. Yeah.
Okay. So let's swing back to Yu-Gi-Oh while we're on the subject of money.
Yeah. The only thing I wanted to mention is this Valiant Souls. So I saw some people had the core out for pre-release, and it was $560 for the Valiant Souls core. Like on pre-release.
Okay, cool.
So before the set was out. Yeah.
So your core, just to qualify, is basically all the cards you would need to build the deck outside of the staples already. Yeah. So all right, this is a good time to bring up money then. Yeah. So it is an expensive buy-in for it, but at the same time, obviously, and when we're swinging around ban lists and stuff like that, you outlay $560, and then you know next month Konami wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and just is like, nah, we're good. Yeah. And then you can't sell them because I assume the price drops immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it for what I have for Yu-Gi-Oh.
We got any new sets on the horizon that look exciting, or any sort of spillage there?
So we just got the Wild Survivors, which is exciting, and then we get Duelist Nexus coming out, I believe, next month, which has some really good cards. I'm excited for that one quite a bit. It's going to have some new Manadium cards, which I'm excited for. I really like that deck.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. All right, and so that wraps up Yu-Gi-Oh! For the day?
Yeah.
All right, well, okay, so the name of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s game is Ban Lists, but we'll circle back to that. And now to a game that doesn't ban quite as much, let's check out Pokemon over here. Tyler, what's going on in the world of Pokemon?
Well, Pokemon has a few things going on. We have a new set dropping on the 9th of June. We have Paldea Evolved is finally coming out. Mentioned last time, mentioned a couple times. So that's officially finally coming out.
And how's the community feeling about that? Are you hyped for this one? Because, I mean, I haven't been too engaged in the community, but I've heard that Scarlet and Violet was a bit of a softer release.
Scarlet and Violet was a very soft release. This is a really big set for collectors, for sure. Players are pretty excited for the set as well, but for differing reasons. One of the main reasons most collectors are excited for this set is the full art, alt art Iono. A card that was so popular in Japan that it actually caused Clayburst, which was the Japanese set it was in, to have massive shortages like all over Japan, to the point where Pokemon came out and officially addressed it, saying we are emergency printing more like right away.
Wow. Okay.
Jeez.
This is a poll that whenever it was the first set came out, I believe it was like $2,000 for this card. It's gone down significantly since then. I think it's about half the price now, but it's still a rather expensive card.
Right.
Half the price. It's still $1,000.
Yeah, it's still a very big pull. It's all very expensive for Pokemon.
I could get 4 Magic packs with that.
That's true.
Yeah.
For the next anniversary, of course.
Yeah.
Or you can find them in a landfill.
Yeah. I've been looking. No luck yet.
Is that what that smell is?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's swing back to Pokemon.
Yeah, so some really beautiful, just expensive pulls as well for collectors. In terms of for players, there is some new Pokemon in the set, like we mentioned before. There's Bellyball EX, there's like Slow King EX. Nothing super powerful in terms of Pokemon that's really caught my eye. It's mostly a trainer and special energy set. We have seen some impact in the competitive play for the Japanese standard already. We'll get to that in a little bit, though.
Well, before we move too far away from it, I did have a question regarding, like, obviously you mentioned Clayburst and the card that's going to be really hot in Paldea Evolved. I've heard, I think this is going to be a shorter print run. Do you think we're going to see that same sort of issue when it comes to sort of English language releases for that particular card in the set?
I don't think so. Typically, our sets are bigger in general. If it is going to do a limited run, it could possibly be an issue, but typically they're pretty good for making sure we have all the product we need, internationally at least. Most of the limited print run problems seem to be in Japan.
Yeah.
And a large part of that was because people were buying them with the intention of exporting them.
Yeah.
To the point where a lot of stores have started breaking the seals whenever they've been purchased.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, the reason I bring that up is just because I saw that this last year, I saw a statistic the other day that Pokemon printed 2.9 billion cards in the last 12 months internationally. So I was just wondering if maybe that was a response to it. But obviously they're still having shortages, and that's the most cards I've ever printed in a single year.
Yeah,
apparently.
This is not the first time they've had some shortage issues. I don't remember the exact set, but I know there was somewhat recently, I believe I mentioned one of the other episodes, that Japan was also having some printing issues as well, and they mentioned that again. Typically, the Pokemon Company kind of, whenever they're having problems, keeps it hush-hush unless it's really bad, and this has been the second time they've really majorly addressed something like this in the last year. So clearly Japan's having some printing issues.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, we don't need to get too inside baseball, but there is some different printing laws in Japan about waste and recycling and stuff like that. So
that definitely has an impact on
Yeah. And I know Magic.
Handle it.
Yeah, I know Magic prints in Japan as well, but those boxes are specifically slightly different to the American ones because of that same sort of the sort of regulations. But let's jump back into the rest of the Pokemon news then.
Yeah. So in terms of Paldea Evolved, in terms of cards that have really caught my eye, and from a player's perspective, we have Ting-Lu EX, not a super crazy high-level card, but has an interesting effect that I do think in the future could see some competitive play. Ting-Lu EX has an ability whenever it is in the active. Any Pokemon that has damage counters on it, except for Pokemon EX, have no abilities.
Oh.
I mentioned this before, but it's really good to... you could shut down draw lines for Pokemon, like supporter Pokemon lines and all that. Once we stop seeing Vs and all that, shutting down offensive attackers probably will be less impactful, but I think it could see a lot of play in the future.
Okay, cool.
And would no abilities mean they just can't attack?
Well, they still have attacks,
Okay,
but
still
certain
have attacks.
Pokemon have abilities. That's a separate thing.
Static,
cool.
the static sort of global ability.
Exactly.
Okay,
a lot of Pokemon you play specifically because they have an ability and nothing else.
A lot of draw support and stuff like that.
Like right now we have
a lot of utility.
The barrel, draws up to 5 and all that. You can prevent your opponent from drawing cards.
Up to 5?
Up to 5 for every barrel you have in play. There's also a card called Squova where you shuffle your hand to the bottom of your deck and draw 1, so you can do that twice per turn.
Shuffle your hand and draw 1.
So you could draw up to 5. Use the Squova to put your hand on the bottom of your deck and then draw up to 5 again.
Oh, up to 5 again.
Yeah.
Oh. What?
Yes, it's for every barrel you have in play, you can do it. That's a fact. Pokemon drawing cards is not a problem.
Once per turn before you attack. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did a little video the other day about just alternative win cards, and I saw that there was an unowned from a couple of years ago that was if you have 35 cards or more in the hand, you win the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe with Pokemon's draw effects, that is possible. I couldn't imagine it in many of these other games, especially like Yu-Gi-Oh, where drawing is the resource.
I mean, that would probably be played in Magic with ad nauseum type of cards.
Yeah.
There would be decks built around that.
Yeah.
In terms of the major cards that are impacting it, though, we have Iono, which we mentioned for the collectability, but as a playability card, it's you shuffle your hand into the bottom of your deck and you draw 1 card for every prize card you have remaining, and your opponent does the same. So it's disruptive. It lets you see a lot of cards. Disruptive in general is very, very good in Pokemon right now. Lost Box is a deck that sees a lot of play, and its biggest weakness is basically disruption. Everything else, if you just let it go, it'll do whatever it wants.
Yeah. Well, I know you were a big fan of that archetype.
Still a huge fan of it, but it is very, very strong.
Yeah.
We also have Reversal Energy. This is a pretty big card. It's a special energy that when you are behind on prizes, if it is attached to an evolution Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box, lots of conditions on this one. But if you can meet these conditions, it gives 3 energy of any type to that Pokemon.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's pretty impactful because that's just 1 attack. Basically, you're upstreaming 3 turns. Well, 2 turns, yeah.
Yeah, so for example, a deck that really takes advantage of this and a deck that looks to be very strong coming out of Paldea Evolved in general is going to be Gardevoir EX.
Okay.
Because it has the Chilling Reign Gardevoir, which has an ability Shining Arcana, which lets you draw 2 cards. You can attach energies that you draw this way to your Pokemon. The whole deck already accelerates energy, but now you have an early game option for, let's say you're in a game, you've lost a prize or 2 early on trying to get set up. Well, now you can just start swinging right away.
Okay.
Instead of having to get your Gardevoir EX out and get everything all powered up.
Yeah. No. It sounds like it's going to be really good ramp utility for the game, for sure.
Oh, exactly. It's going to be really, really impactful for sure.
Awesome.
So in terms of competitive play. We've had 3 major events recently. 2 of them were standard. We had the Hartford Regionals. We saw Fusion Mew came out on top on that one, which is one of the older builds of Mew that we haven't seen for a while. Typically, people have been going for a double turbo version of Mew, which just draws as many cards as possible. The Fusion one uses Meloetta, which does a damage based on every fusion energy in play.
Okay.
And the fusion energies themselves are very, very strong. They let your Pokemon ignore abilities and effects of attacks into Pokemon you're swinging into. So Pokemon that have abilities that say, oh, like V's can't hit this Pokemon. If it has a fusion energy on it, it ignores that.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So yeah, a little bit of more disruption there, I guess, in a sense as well.
Exactly. We saw some Lugia play as well. 2nd and 3rd place was Lugia.
Lugia's still going strong, huh?
Yeah, it's still going strong. Still very different than what it was, but it's still consistent. It still hits the numbers it needs to. We saw the more traditional version of Mew as well. We saw the Double Turbo Mew. We saw Lost Box in 5th and 6th. We saw a more recent version of Arceus Duraludon, which is a build we used to see quite a bit of. We still see it every now and then, but now they started incorporating Umbreon VMAX.
Okay, and what's something so special about the old Umbreon?
So what's nice about the Umbreon is it's a dark type, which is relevant because it hits, Mew for weakness, and it's already been 2 in the top 8 for this tournament. Whenever you evolve your Umbreon V into Umbreon VMAX, however, it has an ability that lets you basically... It's boss's orders. You take a Pokemon on your opponent's bench and you get to put it into the active.
Oh, okay.
So it lets you be more aggressive as well. It lets you swing into Psychic Pokemon for weakness, a Gardevoir as well.
Or even some of those ability Pokemon we were talking about that, usually pretty fragile by comparison.
Exactly.
You throw a support up there, you lose the support.
Whatever you need to as well.
And
nice.
you get a prize from it.
Exactly. And we saw another Mew in 8th place, also the traditional Double Turbo build.
Okay.
We also have Portland. Pretty similar results, a little different though. We had Arceus Giratina, came out on top on that one. We had Lugia in 2nd as well. 3rd through 5th place was all Lost Box, so
okay.
Very popular build, very strong deck in general.
But right in that middle of the curve right there.
Exactly.
Not top, not bottom, but like right in the middle of that top 8 curve. In
6th place, we had the Double Turbo Mew again. We had Miraidon and EX with Flaffy. Not a deck you see placing very often. Generally in these events, you do see it in some like top 64, top 32, you might see 1 or 2, but it's not very common to see it in top 8, so it's nice to see that people have started finding out lists that really work. And we had this similar Arctic Duraludon build in 8th place for that event.
Okay, all right.
So there's some variety in the meta. It's not very different than the base Scarlet and Violet it's not too different from the last format we had, other than Lugia's weaker, and we started seeing some more Arceus builds. But in terms of Japanese standard, it is looking a little different as well, which is nice. We had the Niigata event.
Okay.
They had a big regional. I think there was like 2,000 people showed up to that one. We had 1st and 2nd place was Gardevoir EX. They already have the Clayburst in legal play, so they're using the reversal energies and Iono. Lost Box in 3rd. We saw Arceus Giratina in 4th. Lugia in 5th. Another Gardevoir in 6th. Gudra Lost Box in 7th. And Fusion Mew in 8th.
Okay. So it's a pretty mixed bag there. I mean, that's not bad. That's pretty healthy. That's a pretty healthy, that's at 4 sort of main archetypes there, really?
Yeah, the four major archetypes seems to be what we're going with right now. We have Mew, Lugia, Gardevoir, and Lost Box.
Interesting. Okay, and you notice how you have this very healthy meta and you haven't mentioned bans yet?
No, Pokemon.
Wizards of the Coast, Konami, if you're listening, maybe take a lesson from the Pokemon world.
Yeah, no, but they really don't ban anything for Pokemon unless they really, really have to. So.
Yeah. Unless it's just ultra degenerative, where it's
exactly. I think if back in the Silver Tempest format, if rotation wasn't coming as soon as it was at that point, we may have seen some hits to the Lugia V-Star, but we didn't, so we got through that.
It's so interesting. The thing I love about Pokemon that makes it unique from those other two is that you mentioned it before with that Umbreon as well, and it's just that weakness mechanic. I never really think about it, but it does drastically affect the meta. Because if there is a meta, like you said, if there is a meta deck that is, really dominant, you've got that weakness advantage where you're basically like, all right, let's look to this as the solution. But you don't really have that in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like you've got that sort of, it's sort of almost as like a little bit of a safety valve from banning, I guess, because there's constantly like this, dog chasing its own tail type thing. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
I do find it funny, though, because my buddy was texting me the other day. He said that he bought some Pokemon starter decks with his friend. And he got the fighting starter deck.
Oh, yeah.
And his friend got the electric starter deck.
No.
Or
So he just
Infernos,
dominates.
The electric one was weak to the fighting one. And these two came at the same time.
Yeah, they released it at the same time. They call these products level 1 products for a reason. They give these to the people who really don't know.
Because you only play them once and you're like, all right, this is boring.
Yeah,
that's why it's level 1.
It's level 1, and you
Yeah.
go back to the store and you find the level 2.
Yeah.
I picked the wrong deck. He does twice as much damage.
Yeah,
as I
exactly.
did.
That's the other thing as well. Like, I mean, I like the way that they consolidated Pokemon's types as well, where you can build like a lightning deck. Most of them are weak against fighting specifically,
Yeah.
but there are some, outliers and stuff like that might be weak against other types and stuff.
Yeah, like that's a big thing. Like, so some of the major like type weakness, like triangles or pyramids they go for is like fighting, dark, and psychic, right? So the psychic hits fighting, fighting hits dark, and dark hits psychic. But quite a few dark type Pokemon are weak to grass. Not all of them are weak to fighting, right? Fighting, most of them are weak to psychic, and for psychic, most of them are weak to dark. So I'm not really sure why they went for that partial split in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing is they have to adhere to the IP, right?
That's
so
fair.
wherever they consolidate the video games Pokemon types, they have to consider where to consolidate it. Like, where's
that one's
Fairy?
also one I'm a little confused about, because Fairy usually goes into Psychic.
Nowadays,
Dark,
yeah.
Nowadays, back when it used to have its own type. But Dark is like we have actual Dark type Pokemon. Sometimes you see ghosts, and sometimes
Dark
you
or
see
Psychic.
poison, right?
Yeah.
And from my understanding, none of these are weak to grass. Now, I might be wrong. I'm not an avid
Well, what
Pokemon game player.
What? Yeah, like as far as video game goes, you mean?
The video games are,
yeah. So, what's in the grass archetype mostly? So, grass types.
It's mostly grass, and
just
sometimes there's some poison as well, like Vileplume. But it's
Bug.
usually like and bug as well, right?
And bug. That's the other one. Thank you very much. I knew there was something else there. Yeah. So all right. So
I guess bug would make sense because some dark types are weak to bug.
the other thing is that
right,
both
so.
bug and grass are weak against fire, right? So you don't really get that wedge with the weakness mechanic there.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think they added Fairy to try and add more types, and I think they kind of realized they bit off more than they could chew with that.
Well, join us next time for our special podcast, Weakness Chat.
I'm lost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how we can utilize it in these other games. All right, but back to what else we got going on in Pokemon.
Well, just to finish off competitive, this is not so much about the meta, but there was recently in Colombia there was a special event. These are like the regionals, but they're smaller. They're still worth points and all that. But there was a player who got caught cheating very, very blatantly on stream at this event. He
In
got
Colombia?
In Colombia. Disqualified from the event on stream for, I believe it was finals.
Wait, they were literally on stream mid-game.
This guy is He
You can
gives
see him
the-
taking the cards out of his sleeve.
Well, you can see this happening multiple times throughout the game. Well, basically, this guy's name was Eater Jarillo. I might be pronouncing his name
Yeah,
wrong
name and
if I am.
shame. Name and
Yeah,
shame that guy.
Say it
That
wrong.
fucker.
This guy,
It's a children's card
I'm
game.
calling him out.
How dare you sully
I'm calling him out.
If you're listening right now,
Yeah,
we're coming for you.
But anyways, he pretty common cheat. A pretty common cheat. Definitely something you should be keeping out for as a player. But opponent passes him his deck to cut. Instead of cutting, something you're allowed to do is you're allowed to shuffle your opponent's deck. So he's shuffling, and if you're watching this stream, it's very, very blatant that after the first few shuffles, the top half of the deck is no longer moving. You
Oh,
can
so
see
he's just sliding
he's
out the
very
middle and then
intentionally
putting it-
moving
Yep.
cards to the front of the deck,
Really?
and then the front of the deck is no longer moving.
Wow.
He puts, he gives his opponent back his deck, and if your opponent has shuffled your deck in Pokemon, you're allowed to cut it. However, every time he hands him the deck, he finds a distraction technique of some sort. He goes for like a fist bump, or he passes him the deck, and he immediately goes to like look at his discard, just whatever he can to prevent him from cutting his own deck.
Right. And then that obviously was working on stream. It was
Oh, it
getting-
was.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it worked really well. Like his opponent just kind of went through the game. The judges didn't call him or stop the game or anything. This happened after the game.
So so this is the interesting thing. So what advantage, obviously, not shuffling your opponent's deck is it's a relatively bad thing, but how does he organize what's on top of it? Like how does he make that decision? Like how does he manipulate what they're drawing, or it doesn't? Like what is the advantage there?
So the idea was, the first thing you see from the
You
very,
fucker.
very start of the game, you see it happening, right? So
Yeah.
he's shuffling. So I'm assuming the idea is to shuffle either bad cards to the very top of the deck or shuffle good cards close to the top and not quite so they get put into the prize.
Right,
Instead.
okay.
That's what I'm assuming the strategy is. It makes the most sense typically when you see this kind of cheating where people are trying to position cards on top. They're either intentionally trying to put cards they know are bad on top, or or something along those lines. But he caught on stream, disqualified from the event. I did some more research last night just to make sure. We still haven't heard any news of any sort of banning or any long-term repercussions from this, which is a bit of a problem with Pokemon.
Okay.
We've seen people cheat in the past. You know, any competitive game, there's going to be cheaters, right? It's just how it is.
Yeah.
But we've seen people on stream cheat, people that the community knows are actively cheating now. And we don't hear of official bans or any real repercussion from Pokemon. Sometimes you see these players at it, like they get temporary banned, and then, you know, like a year later, they're back at these events.
Okay, interesting. Back on stream again.
Back on stream again, possibly
yeah.
cheating, apparently.
Yeah. And that's why we gotta fucking call them out on the
right,
show. We're coming for you. Okay, yeah. Name and shame. All right, so some cheating, little cheating controversy. What else we got out of Pokemon?
Other than that, we just have some new product.
Okay.
Well, not so much new. I mentioned it last time. We have Pokemon 151.
Oh yeah, this is one I'm actually really looking forward to.
Yeah, we've seen some more official shows of the cards now. We were talking about it last time, but the cards aren't really styled like old cards at all. They are just like new cards
frames,
of the original 151. There are some Pokemon in there that caught my eye.
Okay.
Some more interesting than others. We have Arbok EX.
Okay.
I just like Arbok, already off to a great start with that one.
Yeah, it's Cobra spelled backwards.
Yep, exactly. Who doesn't love that, right?
Yeah.
This one honestly doesn't look too great, but it has an interesting attack. It's for 3 dark. It hits for 150, and your opponent needs to discard 2, which is always fun. You know, discarding opponent's cards, disrupting
of course.
them.
Yeah, put them under duress.
Yep. There's Ninetales EX. This one is more, I think, just like a collector's card. You know, who doesn't love Ninetales? The attack itself is really specific and not very good. It's for 1 fire, 1 colorless. If you have the same amount of cards in your hand as your opponent, it swings for 220. If you don't, it hits for 80.
Okay, right.
Neither number are... 220 is a good number, but it's not good for how specific the condition is.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a big Ninetales fan, so I'll be keeping an eye on that. Actually, on my
the
set
art
of
on
keys
it's
here,
really nice.
I got an
go.
image of base set Ninetales. It was the first Pokemon pack I ever opened, the rare in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I recommend keeping an eye out for that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Zapdos EX could maybe see some play in some lightning decks. It has an ability that if it has any lightning energy attached to it, it's free retreat, which is always good just on its own. It has 200 HP, which is a little low for 2 prize Pokemon, but it's a basic, so it's nice. And it has an attack that for 3 lightning, it swings for 120, and if your opponent has a damaged Pokemon on their bench, it does 90 damage to that, which is similar to the Jolteon VMAX we saw on Evolving Skies and Sword and Shield.
Okay.
And that did see a lot of competitive play for a little while.
Okay, sweet. So 151, or the Japanese version, is out or isn't out?
I don't think it's out yet.
No, okay. But we're starting to see cards and stuff like that.
Right,
and there's a couple of things that'll shake up. I just want to know if the
Everything's
meta
getting
over there was
confirmation,
changing.
but I don't believe it's part. I don't think it's out yet in Japan. No.
Okay, yeah. All right. And what's the release date here? Like, just generally?
I think it's going to be involved in a different set. I'm not sure. We haven't really gotten the official... I'm not sure if it's going to be a special set on its own or if it's going to be...
It certainly should be. It feels like a really good theme to sort of stick to.
But I'm not 100% sure on that. I think they're saving that for the base Pokemon, like the playing set I mentioned that time with the original style decks with the old Squirtles and the Venusaurs. And it might be just saving that for the nostalgia bait, if you will.
Well, I mean, those nostalgia sets have always hit big. Evolutions, Generations.
Oh, exactly.
And then 151 could do the same for them as well.
There was also one last card I wanted to mention from 151. It's 2 cards. It's more of an interesting combo I really didn't think we'd see. So there's Jinx EX, which is a water type in this one. It has an attack that for 1 water and 2 colorless, if your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, it's now knocked out.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
It's like a
it doesn't check for damage. It's effective an attack. Your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out. We've seen that with Giratina V-Star has V-Star power, just knocks out your Pokemon. But what's interesting about this is the Hypno on 151 has an ability, and what that does is when you play it from your hand to evolve one of your Drowsies, you may choose to make your opponent's active Pokemon asleep.
Okay, so you could be playing, you stack your bench with Drowsies and then just evolve, and then just one hit KO each time. Wow. All right.
Yeah,
cool.
And we have ways to get water energy back quickly onto the Jinx as well in Paldea Evolve. We have Excalibur, which has an ability, I forget the actual name of the ability for this one. I think it's called Super Cold.
Okay.
But it's similar to the Deluge Blastoise we had a long time ago, similar to Rain Dance as well. It's just... If you have water energy in your hand, you can attach them to your Pokemon as you please.
Okay.
So that one, I'm not sure if it'll be competitively. It could be a fun rogue deck, though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Just a little outlier, and I'm sure more support will come out for other stuff with it.
Exactly. And now as well, also there is some new EX starter decks in Japan we've seen.
Okay.
We don't know the release dates on them yet, but it's always nice to see some new EXs.
Now, they're new EXs, but when they import decks from Japan, they usually do their own builds for the English language version, right?
Right. Sometimes we get our own EX starter decks. Usually these get incorporated into other sets. But we have Decidueye EX, Victini EX, Greninja. There's a new Miraidon EX, Koraidon, Houndoom, and Melmetal as well.
Okay.
Most of them honestly just look like starter deck EX bulk. Like they don't really seem that good. In terms of the ones that actually did stand out a little bit, that's having some potential, there was Decidueye EX, which its ability untethered allows it to swap from the active or from the bench once per turn.
Okay, so just free retreat swap?
But it doesn't count as your retreat. It's a swap effect, but only with itself.
Okay.
So that was an interesting one. It also had an attack that for 1 grass, 1 colorless, it does 130 and 30 to a bench Pokemon.
Okay.
Not too crazy, but I mean, we've seen Decidueyes with this kind of attack in the past, and they've seen some play, so could still be relevant. There was also Greninja EX, which for 2 water has it does 120. And if your opponent's active Pokemon that you're sitting is damaged, it does another 120. So it swings for 240, which is a pretty good damage point to be hitting for, especially if it's already been injured. Yeah. In any way.
As well, I mean, that's probably a good play around with like some chip damage, like bench damage and stuff like that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we have like Hawlucha from base Scarlet and Violet. Paldea Evolved had a Meowscarada EX, which just came out. It doesn't seem too impactful, but its ability, you can discard a grass energy and you can put 30 damage to a bench Pokemon, so that's also a possible way to enable it. A little clunky, but it is an option. But really that's about it for the EX decks and mostly for new product in general. Okay. The only thing I really wanted to mention other than that is in August we finally got the name of our next set. Okay. After Paldea Evolved.
So you mean it's due out in August?
Right. That's when it's officially supposed to come out. We don't know anything in it yet, but we do know the name is Obsidian Flames.
Do you know what what part of August? Because I think I just saw that they announced the Worlds in mid-August. So I assume it won't be legal for that.
No, it definitely won't be legal for that. Okay. Even if it came out early August, once it comes out, there still needs to be another 2 weeks between that and the time it's legal. So I'm not 100% sure of the World's release date. I missed that piece of news myself, but I would assume it's not going to be legal for it. I don't think it'd be legal for that.
No, understandable. Here's a question just that came up to my mind, because I've never actually really looked into it. But when you come to an event like Worlds for Pokemon, because the Japanese meta and the English meta, they skew differently, how do those two particular metas incorporate into it? Or do they all just run from the one like
Worlds
sort of
is standard, international standard, I guess is the nice way of saying it. There's Japanese standard and there's a standard everyone else has. And Worlds operates under the standard everyone else plays under. So these Japanese players come from their Japanese standard events, which are best of 1. Outside, like for day 1 is best of 1, then day 2 they do best of 3.
That's
weird. And then they come to our events where day 1 is a best of 3 event with a new legal card pool. Like it must be rather jarring for them.
It is, it's got a bit of whiplash because obviously the game is a Japanese game, and that's where the centerpiece of the whole sort of franchise lives. But then all of a sudden, like if you were a Japanese player, could you imagine? You've been playing this deck, you know it inside and out, and all of a sudden you have to switch back, and that means they have to keep up to date with both. If they're a serious competitive player.
There's also some cultural differences that really come into play as well. You see it a lot if you watch a lot of these Japanese standard events when they stream them. Shuffling, what's considered acceptable for shuffling is really different in a lot of these Japanese standard events.
You gotta shuffle the whole deck.
Well, see, that's the thing. See, here,
we're not playing Colombia here.
Well, our typically when the judges are doing their jobs, the standards of shuffling are much higher for this. Like international standard events, like minimum is like a 7 like mass shuffles is like considered like the bare minimum. Anything less than that is like considered an insufficient shuffle, and even 7 is kind of pushing it. Depending on what, like riffling, there's different numbers, but there is like accepted numbers for each kind of shuffle. And in Japan, you'll see a lot of these times people will, they'll play like a nest ball, they'll search their deck, they'll put their Pokemon down, they'll put their deck together to give it 2 or 3 like Hindu-style shuffles. And then they...
Hang on, whoa. I haven't heard that before. What is Hindu-style shuffle?
So the Hindu shuffle is like you hold your deck, you take a chunk from the middle, you put it on top, you take a chunk, you put it on... That's called Hindu shuffling, right?
Yeah. You see it like slid up,
exactly,
sort of
right?
like in that
But
sort
they'll
of
do that
vertical.
maybe 2-3 times, move like a good like 30% of their deck, and then pass it to their opponent to cut.
Okay.
Wow.
And there's no questions asked. Opponents will take it. Maybe they shuffle it. Maybe they just give it a cut. No one asks questions. In a standard event here, that would be a 2 prize penalty, and it is somewhat common for the Japanese players that go to Worlds and all that are less familiar with the
shuffling and the
structure.
etiquette, the shuffling etiquette, I guess.
The shuffling etiquette, they'll play their game, before they'll play their game, and then mid-game they might start trying to pile shuffle out and act like an in-game, mid-game shuffle, or they'll insufficiently shuffle and they'll get judge calls on them quite a bit.
Interesting.
Now, in Yu-Gi-Oh, we had a similar thing in Worlds, but we have 2 different ban lists between the OCG and the TCG. So whenever we have a Worlds, they kind of just mix them together.
So they have a custom ban list for Worlds?
So there's a Worlds format, basically.
Yeah,
that's bizarre, yeah.
So I was kind of curious if there was something like that for Pokemon, but it doesn't seem like you
we just kind of go with everyone but the Japanese standard does, I guess.
You got me imagining one of those big bingo ball rotating things. They just put all the ban list card names on bingo balls, just turn around. All right, now next card banned. Oh, it is tier elements. Or it's the mind hacker or whatever.
Yeah,
dartboard comes out and all the TCG players just leave.
Awesome. All right, so that's what's going on with Pokemon. Anything else that you want to dust off while we wrap it up?
Pretty much sums it up for Pokemon.
Okay, so it sounds like it's been a busy month for Pokemon for sure. And some more interesting news coming down the line as well. All right, so with Pokemon out of the way, let's hear what has been going on in that magical world of Magic.
The magical world of Magic the Gathering. We got some stuff going on. Let's start off with the release of the new set earlier this month, March of the Machine Aftermath.
Oof.
Oh, yeah.
They're still dealing with that aftermath.
If you listen to the last episode, you'll know that the entire set got leaked. Wizards of the Coast sent the Pinkertons after someone. Whole thing. So we already saw the cards from this set because they all got leaked, and then they all got spoiled, and the set came out, and the general reception was just about that.
If I can remember, I'll put crickets in
the pause. Just about that.
Yeah,
it was not, some people do. Some people are obviously excited about the set, because some people actually like this game. Crazy. But generally, I think most people were just kind of this is kind of a lazy set. It's only 80 new cards and 300 variants or whatever. It's ridiculous.
It definitely seemed like a cash grab for sure.
Same,
and which is no par for the course for Wizards.
That'd be the kind of thing Pokemon would release as a special set. A month before a real set came out.
Yeah, this was same price as regular sets, but 5 card packs.
Oh, fun!
Yeah, you can't even draft
no commons.
No commons.
No commons. That's important.
Well, the question is, I know that there's been some theory online and just in, communities and stuff like that this particular set was just basically shaved off of the main March of the Machine set during design and just dumped as an additional product for revenue's sake.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is lazy.
Yeah,
it is very lazy.
Yeah.
But we did have the Pro Tour. We had the March of the Machine Pro Tour.
Okay. So this is back. So after a couple of years of being silent, Pro Tour. This wasn't the first one back, though, right?
No,
this
it was the last one. Last one.
Okay.
It was Pioneer Pro Tour, which was really great. Yep. Really diverse meta for Pioneer at that point. This one was a standard Pro Tour. So we have the standard top 8 here. Magic uses different names to describe different color combinations. Rakdos is red and black.
Yep.
So when I say Rakdos, red and black. First place, Rakdos mid-range. Second place, Rakdos Reanimator. Fifth place, Rakdos mid-range. Sixth place, Rakdos mid-range. And seventh place, Rakdos mid-range.
What a
interesting.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, has Standard not been Rakdos for like red and black since Crimson Vow maybe?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Pioneer is also Rakdos. It's the same cards that are the problem. Less of a problem there. But we do have some other decks, too. We have third place with an Orzhov mid-range deck, which is white and black. We have fourth place with a Domain green ramp deck, a 5-color, ramp deck, big mana, and 8th place with a blue-white Azorius Soldiers deck.
All right. Well, black made it into almost every deck.
Yeah. Almost.
Once you go black. I will mention, just for anybody who's listening for the Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon sake of it, if you're wondering why these bizarre foreign-sounding words are coming out of the one and only Nico's mouth right now, it's based on like the Ravnica set. These are the first times that they can fuse these colors together, and they're all just like guild names and stuff like that. But yeah, sorry, not to derail too much, but these are pretty obscure words to anybody who's not in the Magic world.
Yeah. So all these red-black decks are running just a different, variety of the same cards. Blood Tithe Harvester is a big one. It is a two mana card, 1 red, 1 black, for a creature with a decent body that can work as card filtering. It can work as a removal spell. It just kind of does anything. It's a pretty ridiculous card. Shieldred the Whispering, we talk about that card all the time. Huge creature that punishes your opponent for drawing cards and benefits you for drawing cards, which you do every turn. It is the kill on sight creature in the format right now.
You're talking to a Pokemon player right now. He knows what about drawing cards.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. but he doesn't get punished for it. He doesn't lose 2 life. He needs to know how it feels.
They put a Shieldred equivalent in Pokemon.
Imagine if you get hurt for it.
I think I just quit the game on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Josh play Professor's Research, lose the game.
Yeah,
GG.
you would. Yeah, no. That card is used with wheel effects. They discard 7 cards, and they draw 7 cards and lose 14 life.
Oh yeah, I know all about that. I played Nekasar the Mind Razor in EDH. So.
Invoke Despair, which is a huge 5-mana spell that just either wipes their board or just they lose a bunch of life and you draw a bunch of cards.
Which then interacts with Shieldred again.
Combo! Combo. Reckoner Bankbuster. This is a vehicle that it comes with counters on it. You can pay to remove the counters, and then you end up drawing cards, making treasure, there's a whole
it's a
novel.
thing.
There's novels on all of them. It doesn't matter anymore. You could just
starting to look like Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yeah. Oh no, it's terrible. Not that Yu-Gi-Oh's terrible. You need
a jeweler's loop just to understand what's on there. Yeah. Magic's pushing that direction.
And of course, the one and only Fable of the Mirror Breaker. There was not room for all the text on one side, so it flips into another card. Of course.
There's a conspiracy theory. They made double-faced cards just to put more words on them.
Yeah, and to make them harder to proxy.
Yeah.
That's
true.
So we got that. It looks like a lot of red and black in the metagame with some other decks. It's not the most unhealthy Standard's ever been. We've had other times where at least you can play different versions of red black. There was even like combo red black going around that was just running the same cards and then just winning with a combo. I don't remember what the combo was. It wasn't good, but anyway. We got a ban list, though.
Oh, okay.
We got some new cards banned.
Who did you say who won the Pro Tour?
Oh, no, I didn't. It was Nathan Steves from Team Handshake.
Okay, I don't know either of those names.
Yep. Everyone playing Rakdos midrange in top 8 was also on Team Handshake.
Oh, okay.
Playing basically the same deck. Not the Rakdos Reanimator, I believe. Yep, they're all.
Now that's an interesting question to bring up for these other two guys.
Yeah.
Magic quite has that scene of people like grinding and stuff together as a team. Like you'll have a collective. One of the most famous is like something like Channel Fireball, which obviously became like an online distributor and stuff like that, and a YouTube channel and stuff eventually. Do you see that sort of culture in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon? Do you see like collective sort of teams getting together and grinding and training together? Pre-major events.
Yeah, you see a lot of like testing groups and all that. Some of them will go by names. The names aren't always the most common thing, but you'll see a lot of events where someone will place in top 8. When you go look at their deck list, you're like, oh, the same deck list was played by the same 4 or 5 other people, and it's the same 4 to 5 people every event, right?
Yeah. And what about in Yu-Gi-Oh? You see that?
I see a lot of like group testing, but like I don't think people really have named teams. Really.
Yeah,
interesting.
I've seen it in like other card games.
Yeah, there's nicknames for some of the testing groups.
I feel like it's
Pokemon,
not very big in Yu-Gi-Oh though.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, obviously there is. Obviously that same culture of testing, but it's just interesting that Magic has latched onto that sort of, that universal sort of like grinding together, and sort of it's become part of sort of the Magic parlance and cadence of the way you play, at a professional level. Not that you can make a living off it anymore, unless you can again. I'm not sure how that would work out. I don't know. they boast numbers. I don't know how people get around.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have 3 banned cards in Standard. It was only cards in Standard that were banned this time around.
Okay. And this is a real ban list, not an AI-generated one.
Yeah, this is real.
So for those who are listening, I think, what was the controversy? There was like somebody like ChatGPT'd the next ban list or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
A bunch of content creators thought it was legit. That's hilarious. So the real ban list.
Real ban list. We have Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
I'm going to hear some familiar names.
Yeah, we're going to hear all the cards I just mentioned. 3 of them.
Yeah.
Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is an insane card. You play it on turn 3. The first turn it comes into play, it makes you a creature. Whenever that creature attacks, you get a treasure token, which is a thing that can make more mana. So it's lets you ramp, it gives you a creature. Next one, you can discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many cards. So, dead cards in your hand, get rid of them. And if you don't have to, if you don't want to discard anything, you don't have to. It also interacts super well with Shieldred, obviously, because you're drawing more cards, which means you're gaining life. Third ability, it flips onto the backside, which is a creature that you can pay 1 and tap that creature to make a copy of any creature you control. It has haste, and that copy leaves at the end of the turn, basically. So if you have other good enter the battlefield effect, or need another attacker, or need a blocker, it can basically do whatever you want. It's pretty ridiculous. And, I think a lot of standard players are very happy to see it gone. Invoke Despair is the other one. Is huge 5-mana spell that just basically is just like that gone.
I'm familiar with that spell.
Yeah. You mentioned it before. Again, as one of the main ones. Yep.
And Reckoner Bankbuster too. Just big thing that makes a bunch of value through the game. You know what I mean? It's like if the game's slowing down, it's like, oh cool, I'll just spend all my extra mana to do this, and then I have a big creature.
The fact that it's a vehicle, it makes it, like in standard at least, makes it really hard to interact with, right?
Yeah, it is harder to interact with, and avoids a lot of removal. There's also rotation changes happening, which was announced before the ban list, so people were like, oh sweet, now we have to play with these cards for 3 years. And then they just announced no.
So back up. So you're saying there's rotation changes.
Yeah, for standard.
For standard. So basically what they've gone, do you want to explain obviously what they've decided to do as a change to sort of, I guess, revitalize standard is the attitude here?
I think they're trying to, I think just because standard is very popular right now, people are playing it a lot on Arena. I think they're going to be, trying to make it so that people will play it for longer, people will stick around by letting them play their decks for longer, and by making sure that the archetypes are all like good and are going to exist for a while. I think that's what they're trying to do. It's so confusing now though, because like they change it so much. I feel like every couple years standard rotation changes, either to get shorter or longer.
It's really like Identity Crisis.
That's how it feels. So it is a bit of a weird change, and I guess we'll see how it turns out. With these cards banned too, red black is like still a thing, but it's not quite as good. So we'll see if this longer rotation just means that there's going to be more banned cards. That kind of seems like what's going to happen.
However, to speak to that though, along with that that standard rotation, there was also a change to the philosophy with banning as well.
Yes.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so they were saying that they're going to ban more, if I'm correct on that. I forget what it was.
Ban more but less often, I think.
Yeah, ban more but less often.
There's only going to be we were talking before about Yu-Gi-Oh's unscheduled ban list, just like you wake up one morning and, all of a sudden there's a bunch of banned cards. I think Magic wants to go to like an annual singular year ban list, which seems impractical considering the point of banning is reactionary.
It seems quite unpractical, especially considering that they usually announce everything together, and how the hell is this going to affect all the other formats that people also play? Play more, a lot of the time, right? So we'll see what actually happens. Who knows? I feel like they're going to say they're going to do that, and then they'll emergency ban something. They're just going to go back.
After the ban list, someone will find a problem. And
exactly.
Complaining.
But yeah, that's kind of what's happening in standard right now. And the metagame is still kind of shifting after those bans too. We're seeing the blue-white soldiers deck actually doing really well, kind of in the wake of everything. It's kind of becoming the new thing with some new cards as well from March of the Machine. Anyway, into new stuff that is coming out, we have Commander Masters coming out soon. This is a Masters product. It's all reprints specifically for the Commander format, which is, casual format, right? Now, this is interesting, though, because the, casual format, reprint set may actually have some impact on competitive formats. This mainly being in the pre-constructed decks. So they sell pre-constructed Commander products. These are, just, made to, sleeve them, play, for new players trying to get into Commander. But they do print new cards into these decks now. They print, 80 of these decks a year now, so you have to look at every single new jank rare for the ones that are randomly amazing in Legacy.
Right. Yeah. But that stuff doesn't fall into Standard, though, right?
No, it doesn't fall into Standard. No.
But
it goes
other
just right to
formats.
Legacy.
Yeah.
And one that a lot of people have their eye on is the Face Commander, the commander for an Eldrazi deck. Eldrazi are these colorless creatures from in between the worlds.
Yeah, sort of like a Cthulhu dark.
That type of deal.
Like the Lords of the Deep or whatever the H.P. Lovecraft thing is.
And people aren't really interested in this card at all for any sort of Eldrazi shenanigans. They're interested for it for Tron, which is a classic Magic archetype using the Tron lands. They are lands that when you have one of each of them, the Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Mine. They tap for 7 for 3 lands.
Oh, okay.
This new card costs 7 and makes all your colorless spells that cost 7 or more have Cascade. Which means whenever you cast them, you flip cards from the top of your deck until you find a spell that costs less, play it for free.
And then you do that again.
You do that again.
But the second Cascade is looking at the first spell that you flip into, right?
No, that would be if that cascaded. See, you're cascading out the first one twice.
So you get basically you're looking to hit anything under 7 twice.
Yes. It's also a cast trigger, so even if they counter the spell, you still cast it, which means you still cascade. So there's a lot of fun rules with cascade. They also technically hit the battlefield first. Anyway, whole thing. So some people are looking at that for those types of formats. We're also looking at potential Pauper impact. Pauper being the all commons format. In these pre-constructed decks, the cards do have rarities. The rarities don't matter because what's in them is predetermined. However, one of these decks is a Slivers deck. Slivers are a bit of a fan favorite or fan hated tribe in Magic. You're kind of on one side usually, or both. But Slivers are a deck that's always been like almost good in Pauper. They have a lot of good stuff. They can build up their board super quick, but they're just missing things. And the fact that we're getting a new Sliver Precon deck, probably going to have some downshifts. Cards that were previously printed as uncommon, now at common, might make Pauper Slivers a real, or at least a realer deck. There's also the potential that there's going to be new cards too. We don't know yet.
That seems bizarre that they would, like you said, so Precon deck's rarity is just basically a token effort. It's interesting that they would downshift the rarity to put it into a pre-constructed product because, changing the color of the icon on the expansion symbol, which is how you define rarity in Magic, doesn't really matter. No. So do you think that this is a decision that they've made specifically with Pauper and
Yes, because they, Pauper, I think it was last year, became like an officially recognized format by Wizards of the Coast, and they have said that they are going to print cards for Pauper with Pauper in mind.
Pauper Pro Tour for life.
Pauper Pro Tour. Pauper Masters coming out soon. Packs are,
it's the same with all the commons that they left out of Aftermath.
The packs are still $20 each, and you can...
For 4 cards. 4 commons.
For 4 commons,
they're going to reprint Fable as a common.
I wouldn't put it past them. That's what we're looking at for Commander Masters, as well as just big Commander reprints. Cards that are, reaching hundreds of dollars at this point have the potential to get reprinted. That is nice to look forward to for Commander players who want to buy cards. Anyway, the bigger set that we're really interested in here is the Lord of the Rings set.
So we're seeing a little news out of this one. This one's starting to sort of hit the news cycle and stuff like that. So let's see what we can break down there.
Yes, so as I mentioned before, the One Ring, it is a 1/1 printed card. They have shown off in a video. Now Magic players probably know very well about foil cards.
I'm sure these guys would know as well. I mean, I think these guys do better as far as Magic and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh go. Foil curling.
Foil curling.
What you're talking about. Yeah.
They've shown off the One Ring in a video.
Which is theoretically the only printed version of it. It's
already curled. It's not too bad.
They couldn't even just humidity control a closet or something for it.
I love that the video that you're talking about has somebody wearing these white, Michael Jackson style white felt, card handling gloves. But they're like, oh, look at that, and it's just you can still see the curve on it.
Yeah. So if this is the one that's going into packs, you can look at it. You'll be able to feel it.
Ultimately, though, I think, in reality, I think that guy's going to get slabbed anyway in, a grading thing. So, it's going to be flat to look at, but, of course, Magic and their fucking curling.
It is.
Couldn't even do it, for their 1/1 card.
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
Another thing with this set that I think is really funny to talk about is the card frame. So it was last year, I believe, that Wizards of the Coast introduced the new card frame for the Warhammer Commander decks. It's kind of like the shiny metallic frame that they're using for...
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
It looks terrible. Why do they all look like artifacts? They all look like...
It looks like a Breville effect in like an amateur, like a first year Photoshop student would be able to do.
It's like a
gradient.
Why do Lord of the Rings cards have like a sci-fi thing going on too?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. It is. It made sense for Warhammer. It didn't really look good, but it was fine.
You got that metallic paint style.
Yeah, it's sure, but Lord of the Rings, it's like the regular Magic card frame works really well for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the old card frame also works even better for that. Anyway.
Yeah.
There are actually some very cool references in art for Lord of the Rings fans, and there's a lot of cards that reference specific things in the books. A lot of obscure characters are getting their own cards too, which is pretty sweet for big Lord of the Rings fans.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who are really into this. One thing that is very interesting, they've shown off, one of the big new mechanics from the set. The ring tempts you.
Yeah. This is another like one of those external card mechanics, right?
Yeah,
so like Dungeons was.
Yeah, so Magic's done these before, where specifically with like crossover sets, they like to do a thing that kind of goes outside of Magic. Yeah. So like they had Enter the Dungeon and Initiative from the Lord of the Rings sets. Initiative ended up ruining multiple Magic formats because it was insanely good.
Yeah, I remember Pauper.
So everyone's terrified. Everyone's terrified that this the ring tempts you mechanic is going to be too good. A couple things to note about it, though, is that it's really confusing. To explain the rules, they use a rules card, and it says it on both sides. Different things, right? It's very hard mechanic to kind of, like, say how it works. Basically, like, you choose a creature to be your ring bearer, and then they're legendary, and then you get a new effect every turn, and when it dies, you can change the ring over. Like, people haven't played with it yet, so it might work well played out, but
for those just listening, there's the three of us are just looking very confused as Nico struggles to explain this thing, which is ironic because these sets that are crossover sets are supposed to bring people into the world of Magic. Yet they make them so extremely complicated. What the hell? Like you should be getting these should be core sets. Like we saw, they shouldn't have these like crazy because everything's got to be built for Commander play and all that sort of stuff nowadays. You can't have core sets.
I can see this being something that people forget to they miss triggers for. I've played so many games of Commander where people forget what Monarch does. That's literally you like draw a card at the end of your turn, and that's too much to handle.
It's pretty crazy. So it's confusing. It's also unflavorful because there's no downside to having the ring.
There's no downside.
There's no downside to having the ring. Which the whole point is that
there's a downside.
The whole point.
It corrupts you.
And
tempts you.
Mark Rosewater said, "Oh, players don't like playing with downsides." Yes, they do. Like people love Death Shadow. People love Phyrexian mana. People love hurting themselves for gain. It's like people like that. That's fun. Anyway, so what does it give you as far as positives? Sorry, are pretty cool. You get some evasion, you get looting, you get like pseudo death touch type effects. These all kind of make sense for having the ring, right? You're kind of evasive, and it puts a target on you, right? And that is a big thing too. So as far as new cards that we've actually seen, I've got a couple to go over here that are somewhat interesting. So for the Pauper format, we've actually seen a lot of common cards that may have a big effect on the format. One of those is Bombadil's Song. This is a protection spell, so it gives us something +1/+1 and hexproof, and also the ring tempts you. So if they play a kill spell, you play that in response, your creature is safe, and then you're now generating those resources from the ring from that. So it is, for 2 mana, we'll see if it's actually good. We'll see if Ring Tempts You is actually solid in Pauper. But if it is, this could be a really good card that can really change the pace of the game just by playing one spell. We're also seeing Wizard's Rockets, which is a new egg. Eggs are a type of Magic card. They're cheap artifacts that you can crack to do an effect.
Which basically
sacrifice it to get an effect. This one lets you pay X amount of mana and sacrifice it to make any amount of that mana in any colors. So you can filter your mana to play different things, and whenever it hits the graveyard, you draw a card. Enters tapped for 1 mana. So pretty decent egg. Could see play in Pauper or any other format where eggs might come back in a way. We're also seeing Cast into Fire, which is a very obvious Pauper meta card. Cast into Fire it can destroy an artifact, or it can deal 1 damage to all creatures. Affinity being the biggest deck in Pauper, second biggest deck in Pauper being an artifact-based deck, great against that, and Fairies also being a very good deck in Pauper, dealing 1 damage to all creatures. Pretty much all the creatures in the deck have 1 toughness.
Oh, and then is that all creatures on your opponent's side of the field, or
I believe it's all creatures.
All creatures, right?
Yeah,
so it needs to take you as well. Yep.
So a card that can definitely see a lot of play in Pauper sideboards, something that I think is very clearly made for Pauper. It's not the only type of card we've ever seen.
What's the speed of it? Instant or sorcery?
I believe it's an instant.
Okay, all right, that's even better.
I know. 1 in red. We're also seeing a couple interesting cards here that could see some play in a reanimation style in Pauper or in other formats too. We've seen these types of cards see play. Pauper Pro Tour. This is Troll of Khazad Doom and Generous Ent. There's a whole cycle of these, one for each color. They have an ability called land cycling, where you pay mana, you discard that card, you search your deck for a land. So they're big creatures that you can just pay 1 to put them in your graveyard and replace it with a land. Pretty decent for a reanimation type deck, where a big problem with those decks is actually getting big creatures in the graveyard. These can just go right from your hand to your graveyard. These types of cards have seen play in other formats too. So, you know, depending on how good they are, they could actually end up overtaking some other slots for different decks in that style. And the land is nice, too. Specifically in formats other than Pauper, if it says like mountain cycling, you can get something that's like a mountain, a swamp, and an island.
Right.
You can get like one of the triomes or something. So it is actually fixing in those formats too, in kind of a slow way, but still a meaningful way. So going into the other competitive formats, this set is weird because it is going right into Modern, which doesn't make any sense. Modern is supposed to be, you know, everything from like 2003 onwards as far as main set goes, as well as 2 specific exceptions to that: Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2, which makes sense.
Yeah.
They're printed for Modern. Why
Like
the hell
Modern
is
in the name?
Why the hell is this in Modern though? It's just a supplemental set.
Yeah.
It's not going into Standard.
That is weird.
Yeah.
And it is bizarre, obviously, as well. Just even from a thematic standpoint.
Yeah,
you know, obviously you've got these cards coming in to Modern, so now you're going to have Tom Bombadil pop up in a Modern tournament alongside, you know, something like Eldrazi or something like that.
It doesn't really make that much sense to me.
No.
But anyway, we do have a couple.
It seems to be the whatsy theme.
Yeah, I mean, like,
we're sure they know what they're doing.
I'm not sure.
I don't
That's not
believe
to
it.
ask them in a question.
Honestly, it feels like one of those companies that just has too many meetings and they just end up cycling away. Like any good idea that they had, it just gets synthesized and synthesized and synthesized. Yeah,
pretty much.
But yeah, moving through some stuff like that.
Yeah.
What else we got going on in Magic?
So for as far as like, you know, these cards in this set that might have actual impact on Modern, there are a couple really interesting cards we can see, such as the new Aragorn the Uniter. This card is one of each color except for black, which touch on that
later.
On that. Is a 4/4 creature, human noble, and then whenever you play a white spell, you make a 1/1 creature. Whenever you play a blue spell, you scry 2. Red spell, deal damage to your opponent, 3 damage, and green spell, any creature you control gets +4/+4 until end of turn.
Oh, that's interesting.
We've seen these, you know, 4-color do a bunch of good effect cards be really good before, like Omnath is really good in Modern. You know, the new Omnath can see play
and
too.
stuff like that.
Yeah, if you play the Omnath too, you get all those effects because it is all 4 colors. So that's a pretty huge value. So that could see play. It's also going to obviously be a popular commander too. People love playing multicolor spells. Stern Scolding is really interesting. This is a new counter spell. Fatal Push is one of the best removal spells in all of Magic. It's 1 black mana to destroy a creature with converted mana cost, so just total mana cost 2 or less. If you have something you control left the battlefield that turn, it's 4 or less. Stern Scolding is a counter spell that can counter a creature with power toughness 2 or less. For only 1 blue mana, which is the majority of creatures in competitive formats, right? You know, this counters a lot of the big threats.
Yeah, I did see a statistic the other day. It's like of the, you know, the top 10 most played creatures, it kills half of them, and then like I think of the top 20, it kills like 15, and then of the top 50, I think it was like 30 of them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see this sort of come in for a single blue mana.
For 1 blue mana, it is probably going to see quite a bit of play, and even if it doesn't, it's still something you have to look out for.
Play around.
Yeah. Speaking of that, kind of a protection to that, actually, is Delighted Halfling. This is a new mana dork. Mana dorks are small creatures that tap for mana. It's 1 green for a 1/2. It taps for colorless, or it can tap for any mana only for legendary creatures, and those can't be countered. Or, sorry, legendary spells. So that means Ragavan, the most problematic card in all of Modern, now can't be countered.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, Renin 6, the best planeswalker, can't be countered. All sorts of good stuff there.
Nice.
So probably something that we'll see a lot of play. There may even be some sort of like red-green legendary deck that could kind of be built out of this. I can imagine that happening. We'll see what actually happens. And then I have one other interesting card to touch on too, Mirkwood Bats. This one's funny because I saw a really funny Twitter interaction about this one where I believe it was Dana, I forget his last name, but from EDH Rec, posted this card and was like, this card should have never been printed. This is ridiculous. It is a bat that makes, whenever you create or sacrifice a token, your opponents lose life, which, you know, treasure tokens, super relevant in Magic right now. You know, obviously, making your opponents lose 2 for each treasure token you make and then sacrifice is pretty big. But just the fact that someone responded with a picture of every copy of Lightning Bolt, because it just dies to removal, right? Which, to which, you know, the first guy responded being like, oh, you know, this is a ridiculous argument, you know, the dies to Doomblade argument. And then, of course, he responds being like, wow, Commander Player, I didn't think Commander Player would respond and know you guys believe in interaction. I just like that. That was just funny. You know, probably going to see some play in Commander, though. So, you know, overall, like, this is a high power level set, and we haven't seen everything yet. Like, there's a lot going on in this set. And that's going to impact every format. Which is interesting that it's the Lord of the Rings set. It's like, you know, Lord of the Rings is cool. I think it's fun, but like, I like Magic.
Yeah. Like a fun like supplementary set that might maybe find like a niche in like Commander or something.
Yeah,
right?
like if it was just a Commander set, and obviously there is so many Commander cards that I didn't mention. You know, like obviously
There's tons.
Every cool character from Lord of the Rings has a Commander that people are gonna play so much of, right?
So I am forced to cut through the treacle because we are running on time. But do we want to address the other, quality that this set has gotten much ire from some members of the community?
Some members of the community.
Some less than desirable ones.
Yeah. So, beloved Lord of the Rings character Aragorn, despite being 4 colors,
none of which are black.
He
is no.
He has been depicted as black in this set. Which doesn't matter.
No, it does not matter. But obviously, people are getting behind it. It's like, that's not my, that's not my Aragorn.
I watched the movie and he looked different in the
movie. Yeah, he looked different in the movie.
Yeah.
And then I think the argument's been made, obviously, that there's no real, other than the fact that he's gritty or something like that, there's no real depiction or reference to skin color in the Tolkien description.
Yeah, there's nothing said in the book particularly about it, so it is.
I heard about this one. Some YouTubers were doing.
See, this is what you messaged me this week, or you messaged us this week, and you were like, there's something that's crossing over into Yu-Gi-Oh! From Magic, and I'm like, I guarantee being, demographically a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Skews in a different direction, I was like, I'm assuming this is going to hit Yu-Gi-Oh!
So, like, Team APS, a couple of guys from that...
Who are all black content creators.
They're all black content creators. They posted about it, how they really liked the card, and how it, like, they could see themselves into it, and they loved it like that. And then you get all these people posting about how, like, he's not supposed to be this color. And somebody posted a picture of the book that said pale when they were describing Aragorn or something. He was like, what about this?
What about this?
This is evidence.
This is evidence.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Internet.
Reread the entirety of the Lord of the Rings so I can find one reference to a possible
The fact that this guy actually did that, though.
It's stupid. And honestly, like, we criticize Wizards of the Coast, but hey, brave decision. Think it's a great idea. Like I said, people need to shut the fuck up and understand that, diversity is a thing and representation is important. Like you said, the APS guys can see themselves in it. I don't think I've ever said that about a real Magic card before, perhaps like a Teferi or something like that. But at the same time, a character who resonates with pop culture in such a significant way, he's like the king of men or whatever. Is depicted in this way. It's a fantastic way to represent him.
Yeah, for sure.
It is.
TCG Scoops is full Black Aragorn.
Yep.
Just I'm saying it here now. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know what else to say.
No, that's the answer.
Yeah.
That's the answer. Does not matter. Yes.
It's pretty,
Okay, cool. What we're going to do is, unfortunately, we do have to cut through. Is there anything else you want to quickly mention from the Mode of Magic?
That's all I got from Magic.
Excellent, excellent, because we are going to get kicked out. We don't want to have to hear the door knock again in this episode. As you're just listening, you might have figured out we're in our little emergency backup studio here in Charlottetown. So let's jump down to Crack Play Build, which is our segment every week where we just sort of go through what we want to play, what we want to, what decks we want to build, what we want to open in booster packs, and what we think are strong meta things in our respective games. So let's go in the reverse order to what we did it. So starting down with the one and only Nico at the end there.
Yes.
Tell us what you think. What do you want to crack?
Shieldred.
Always Shieldred. I think it was your answer last month too, so nothing has changed.
Nothing's changed.
Until something gets shaken up there.
A play set's probably like $300 right now. It's ridiculous.
Because you said it was like 80 or 80 US,
something
so it's
like
probably
that,
like 100 Canadian
I don't even
plus.
know anymore.
But buy it on Toad and Troll and use a discount code to support the channel. Or don't buy it, wait till it gets banned.
I'll take one.
Well, if you're gonna buy one, do it on Toad and Troll. Okay, so build. What do you think is Rakdos-y or buildy that you want to do? Choose a format and tell us.
Yeah, so I'd say the best build right now, like the thing that really is the best in the meta right now for standard specifically is actually Blue-White Soldiers now that all the Rakdos cards are banned. It has 36% of the metagame right now, which is pretty good. It is an interesting deck. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on with like a blue-white creature deck. You just don't see that very often. So it has a lot of cool disruption elements too, and just a lot of tokens too. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then last but not least, what do you want to play? What do you want to play? Choose a format and tell us like what you love playing.
So for Pauper right now, I think it's really interesting. Over the past year or so, Pauper Burn has changed so much.
That was always like a hugely important archetype in Pauper because burn spells are usually common.
So we're also, but what we kind of saw was more of an artifact theme in Burn with Kuldotha Rebirth. 1 red, sacrifice an artifact, make 3 1/1s. We're seeing all sorts of small artifacts that let you draw cards or pseudo draw cards whenever they get sacrificed or sent to the graveyard. So we saw all this cool innovation in Burn. Now we're seeing another one with the use of Burning Tree Emissary. This is a 2-mana creature for 2 mana that when it enters the battlefield, you add a red and a green to your mana pool for the turn. So it's essentially free if you play your cards right. And it is kind of cool to see, Burn branching into green now because it gets to run a couple green cards in the sideboard. So just the fact that Burn is constantly evolving in Pauper, it makes it really fun for me.
It makes it dynamic. Yeah, absolutely. As an eternal format that constantly, and like you said, we'll check back in on Pauper once Lord of the Rings is in people's hands as well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, so briskly moving through this segment with Pokemon. Let's keep it short, but Crack, what do you want to see?
Crack right now has got to be the alt art, full art Iono.
Yep.
Huge
of course.
pull.
Yeah. Do you know what like a market value is on roughly?
I'm not sure right now. We're still in pre-release for Pokemon, so
it's
any
elevated
English pricing take with a heavy grain of salt.
Yeah. Not $2,000
but
or whatever.
But it is easily the most expensive card in the set.
Awesome. All right, so Build, what is the deck that you're most excited by at the moment?
In terms of what I'm most excited by, it's either I don't think my answer's changed a whole lot. It's still Belly Bolt EX. It just seems like a fun, annoying deck to play. Ting-Lu EX also has caught my attention. I'm thinking about maybe do something with that, but either Belly Bolt or Ting-Lu for sure.
Okay, sweet. And then Build, what is the one thing, regardless of format, not that Pokemon has a diverse, deep range of different formats, but what do you want to see there?
In terms of play,
like
if you want to be playing like the best of the best in Pokemon right now, going forward into Paldea Evolved, you need to be playing Gardevoir for sure.
Okay.
Or Lost Box.
Okay, sweet. Okay, cool. All right, and then we're going to go over to Yu-Gi-Oh! What do we got to Parker?
For Crack, so we got the Valiant Souls, like the whole archetype pretty much, because there's so many ways of getting it.
Yeah. And everyone's a super rare or whatever it is. Yeah,
you can get collector's rare versions of these too, so you can get even like fancier versions in the ultra.
Wow.
So.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that's what it is for Crack. And then for Build, Dinosaur, it got some new cards, and I'm excited for that. I really like the Dinosaur archetype.
Yeah, I want to try that out.
Yeah, that's always really fun. And then for play, people are still going to be messing with Kashtira and Pirelli, I think. But I still like Manadome. It's a really fun deck, so I'm just going to be keeping messing with that, I think.
Awesome. I'm super excited. Were you going to say something, Nico?
No, just hell yeah.
I'm super excited for this dinosaur deck because it means if there's dinosaur deck coming out here, we've also got Ixalan coming at the end of the year. So there might be dinosaurs dominant in 2 of these 3 games. So I'm excited to see if that ends up shaking stuff up. All right, there is I can't believe, what do we just burn through an hour and a half? I can't believe how quickly this time goes. And we could have talked for another couple of hours easily. Unfortunately, it is time to wrap it up, though. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. As always, it's TCG Scoops. My name has been Rance, the guy next to me.
Parker.
Next to him,
Tyler.
And then the one and only
Nico.
There it is. All right, we got all of it. Before we wrap up, again, like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast and leave a review if you're listening to it just audibly. There's a couple of things I want to cover. Obviously, I dropped it in there a little bit, but I can't emphasize. If you want to jump on Toad and Troll and buy some singles for any of these 3 games, very, very important to get the discount on that, because who doesn't like cheaper shit? I certainly do. The other thing I want to mention as well is this show is starting to evolve a little bit. We want to do some changes and stuff like that. If you enjoy it or if you don't enjoy it, please let us know what you think about it. Like I said, all feedback is good feedback. I want to hear it. I want to hear suggestions about how we can change or alter, evolve this show into something, even grander than what it already is, and maybe even try and figure out, some other segments and stuff like that. So I want to hear what you guys want to think about this show and then how it goes from there. All right, that's about it for me. The last thing I will mention is if you're into sort of the more obscure games, not the big 3 we talked about, but if you're into the more obscure games, you want to get some cards or, find out how other, non-big 3 trading card games go, I suggest jumping over to Category 1 Games. Long-time sponsor, almost since episode 1 of everything on the Booster Pack Network. So you can check them out. They sell a lot of classic collectible card games as well on there. So please check them out. Send them your money as well, because they're small family-run company that does an amazing work. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I cannot emphasize how much I appreciate you guys all listening. And again, please send in your feedback. So that's it for me and the rest of the guys here. Until next time, remember, keep shuffling.